They use the exact same system, except they replaced the Hammerlin SP600 with an RCA receiver designed back in the mid-30s by a man known as Nikola Turbo, who really was Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla understood the delta time factor, and by placement of coils and such in the receiver, he replicated the pyramid factor, if you want to call it that, for those people who are not going to go through all the delta T factors and stuff like that. And they replicated the pyramid coil with the receiver. Of course, the block diagram is the same, except that the RCA receiver had different IF frequencies and all that nonsense, but we don't have to go into that here. You can see I have in parentheses the different IFs and the changes that they had for the receiver. This, of course, is a picture of the RCA receiver actually taken off the Montauk Air Force Base. Again, you can see the moisture damage. This particular one I haven't fired up. I fired up the others, which I've gotten out of RCA. They're in much better shape. Like you see, this one's missing a tuner. And if we go inside, we can see this thing was designed when Bob Butlick was a young man. And if we go to the back, let's go to the front. These things are each individual coil stages. This thing, they apparently, for some reason, didn't want to use a gang tuning cap. So each individual section of the preselector was an individually tuned network. They had separate tubes for each front end. This one's, of course, missing, and the local oscillator sat down here, but of course this one was modified to use the remote local oscillator that was locked. So you can see that's all missing. They got two nice, neat little boxes here that do convert down to the IF module, which I don't have pictures of because it looks like this. And if we go to the back, we can see every element in the vacuum tube has its own coil that sits right under the big coil. Although there's a big metal plate, aluminum plate in here, there is a higher order relativistic psychic energy quantum coupling between these coils and the coil up above. That's your delta T function. This is one of the secrets that Nikola Tesla had learned, how to place these coils to get time manipulations within this part of the circuit here. You got the same thing here. You notice this is very symmetrically laid out. Of course, this is designed back when Bob here was a kid. Of course, they used the same carrier oscillator, the same carrier processor, and the rest of the 9 yards of the stuff. And this chair, since it was somewhat shielded, they placed this system in a room right under the transmitter building, right above the delta T antenna that was buried. That was like 200 feet on the side that looked like this over here, but you can get that later. And, of course, Mr. Cameron would sit in the chair. He would go into a trance, completely clear his mind. They would put a thought into his mind that they want transmitted, and he would think it. All this equipment would pick it up, process it through the computers. We now have a block diagram of the computer system. What's the first thing you see? 6 channels of A to D converters. Of course, there's no mystery here. I'm not going to go into what A to D converters do. That's analog to digital converters, 1 of 6, 6 of 6. The Cray 1 was the most advanced computer at the time. It had a 32-bit bus. They used a PDP-11 or a VAX-11 to interface to Cray 1. You couldn't talk to this thing direct. You had to use a smaller computer to talk to the bigger computer. Mr. Cray, he used his worldly wide wisdom to design a system like this. And they had all sorts of peripherals. With this, they could sit Mr. Cameron in the chair, go through the whole 9 yards. The algorithms in the Cray 1 would break down what he was thinking into audio, visual, direct digital representation. They could display it on a screen like this, what he was thinking. They could type out what he was thinking verbally on words on a what looked like an old teletype, a KSR-33 teletype. I think we all remember those things clanking away a million bits a minute, making tons of noise. Nobody liked to listen to things, so they stuck them in the corner somewhere. And what did this do? This spit it into another computer. This computer essentially was used for storage of the information, and also they had to remove the thought form matrix from the thought form that Mr. Cameron was generating and put on the matrix that represented the matrix of the transmitter. Remember, when you're requiring a human being or a technological device to transmit a thought form, the matrix of that thought form has to match the matrix of the transmitting agent, or else nothing's going to happen, baby. So this computer would go through all the digital codes, remove the signature of Mr. Cameron, and put on the signature of the key person that designed the transmitter, because that's the matrix that was in the transmitter. Remember, this equipment becomes a conscious being. This is psychotronics, a conscious being this equipment becomes. It has a consciousness of its own. And just as you reject a form that is not yours, the transmitter will also reject the form which is not it. So this computer reprocessed from Mr. Cameron's matrix or signature to the transmitter's matrix, which was the head design man on the station. This, of course, went to another console, which controlled this computer. It controlled whether it was stored on magnetic tape, whether a thought form was played back from magnetic tape. An IBM 360 had big magnetic tape. It wasn't until later on they got the disc packs, which were about yay by yay, but still they were magnetic. That took in double precision 16-bit bus. It generated a 16-bit signal. I'm sorry, this was 32-bit. It generated a 16-bit signal for this very specialized semi-analog digital computer designed by AIL, division of Cutler-Hammer. Of course, I used to work for AIL, division of Cutler-Hammer, and recently got laid off. And I went looking for information on this computer, and all the print numbers and such, they're listed on file, but there's no prints available, there's no titles listed at the number, they're listed as blank. Skip these numbers. That's quite interesting. And when I started to inquire, security went up like a rocket through the roof. You're not supposed to inquire about stuff like that. Well, the thing's sitting on Montauk Point. This thing will go from that end of the room to that end of the room. Lots and lots of vacuum tubes. The thing was a forest of 6080s. The thing had this huge big canister in it which had electrical acoustical quartz delay lines, which turned out to actually can generate a consciousness in those darn things. I still don't fully understand it. And 16 bits of data went out. We got 17 lines of individual pulse modulations. This is where we differ from a radar transmitter. Also, the transmitter controlled the antennas, what was going on with the antennas, where it was pointed when they were using the directional antenna, or it would switch to different phasings and the different dipoles on the big stick that had about 30 or 40 odd dipoles on it. I never could count them. I'm not going up on the top of that tower to count the dipoles on the antenna. I'm crazy, but not stupid. And we go back to the transmitter. Notice we've gone here, we've gone here, now we're going to go here. Notice they got two of these monsters. They got two of these 100 kilowatt transmitters. This is now a block diagram of the transmitter. The basic signal is essentially a heterodyne type setup. What's interesting about this is the Stalo, which is a huge chassis with 5 crystal oscillators on it, electronically switched, means they can switch to 5 different frequencies. This is important for the Levinson transform. That was a function where you could translate frequency deviations to time deviations. It was delta F with respect to delta T, using differential equations and such. And I've seen the mathematics, and I don't want to go into it here. And we would multiply, go into this mixer. Now this one could either supply a CW signal or an FM signal. Of course, we had a massive synthesizer supplying the signals for this. They had multiple mixers. They came up here finally with 425 to 450 megahertz. Now, they talk of synchrodynes. That name is right off a block diagram that's carried out personally by Preston from Montauk in '86.